Hi again, and welcome to our channel. I'm going to be doing the read aloud session of Eveline and explain a couple things that we read through the story. There is another video before this. If you can please watch that before you continue watching this one, as this is only about the reading aloud, and it does help if you understand what some of the words are before we read the story. Otherwise, let's get on to it. All right, Eveline. She sat at the window watching the evening invade the avenue. Her head was leaned against the window curtains, and in her nostrils was the odor of a dusty cretonne. This is basically a curtain-type smell. She was tired. Few people passed. The man out of the last house passed on his way home, and she heard footsteps clacking along the concrete pavement. Afterwards, the crunching on the cinder path before the new red houses. A cinder path basically is where a bunch of smoke with ash and stuff in it has now fallen from the sky and is now on the concrete on the pathway, and as you step it makes that crunch, 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 crunch sound. And obviously this happened before the new houses that were the color of red. One time there used to be a field in which they used to play every evening with the people's children, meaning this was a park maybe at some stage, but it wasn't really known as a park. It was just a vacant area or an area that was available. Then a man from Belfast, this is northern of Ireland, bought the field and built houses in it. Not like the little brown houses, but bright brick houses with shining roofs. So this must have been a new style at that time. The children of the avenue used to play together in that field. Now, the following I'm going to read are surnames: the Devines, the Waters, the Duns, and Little Co, the cripple. She and her brothers and sisters. Ernest, however, never played. He was too grown up, meaning he obviously must have been old enough and was pretending that he's not a child anymore. Her father used to often hunt them in and out of the field with black thorn stick, but a little co used to keep nicks and call out when he saw her father coming. So basically, a black thorn stick was a type of a bush, and he would take a twig and snap it, and they had all those thorns, and he would obviously chase the children away from that area. And little co would obviously say, "Hey, something's happening. What's it? Run away, run away." Still, they seem to have been rather happy then. Her father was not so bad then, and besides, her mother was alive. That was long ago too. She and her brothers and sisters were now all grown up, and her mother was unalived or passed on. Tizzy Dunn was also passed on too, and the Waters had gone back to England. So, meaning the family who had the surname Waters have moved back to England. Everything changes. Now she was going to go away like the others, to leave her home. So Eveline's leaving her own home. Home, she looked around the room, reviewing all of its familiar objects she had just dusted once a week for so many years, wondering where on earth all that dust came from. I have to agree. I also have no idea where the dust in my house comes from. Anyway, perhaps she would never see again those familiar objects from which she had never dreamed of being divided. And yet, during all those years, she had found out the name of the priest whose yellowing photograph hung on the wall above the broken harmonium. That's the special piano I spoke about in our other video. Beside the colored print of the promises made to Blessed Margaret Mary Alaquae. Alacoque. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name. He had been a school friend of her father. Whenever he showed the photograph to a visitor, her father used to pass it with a casual word, "He is in Melbourne now," meaning this person's now somewhere in Australia and it's called Melbourne. She had consented to go, to leave her home. Was that wise? She tried to weigh each side of that question. In her home anyway, she had shelter and food. She had those whom she had known all of her life about her. Of course, she had to work hard, both in and out of the house, meaning at the business. What would they say of her in the stores when they found out that she had run away with a fellow, meaning she's running away with her partner to be? Say she was a fool, meaning she's being silly to marry somebody, perhaps, and her place would be filled up by the advertisement, meaning an advertisement of her job vacancy would be available and someone would then come and replace her. Miss Gavin would be glad. She had always had an edge on her, meaning she didn't enjoy Eveline, especially whenever there were people listening. Miss Hill, don't you see these ladies are waiting? Look lively, Miss Hill, please. So this Miss Gavin is busy telling her to do things all the time. She would not cry many tears at leaving the stores, meaning the stores is basically the name of a shop, obviously called the stores. But in her new home, in a distant, unknown country, it would not be like that. Then she would be married. She, Eveline, people would treat her with the respect then. She would not be treated as her mother had been. Even now, though she was over 19, she sometimes felt herself in danger of her father's violence. She knew it was that had given her the palpitations. So we're talking about maybe some abuse, unfortunately. And yes, people got married as early as 19, 18, if not a little younger. It was part of those time frames where it was normal to get married then. Heart palpitations, and basically her heart would go into a very fast rhythm, which could cause issues later in her life. But that's what we kind of mean about palpitations. When they were growing up, he had never gone for her like he used to go for Harry and Ernest because she was a girl. But latterly, he had begun to threaten her and say what he would to do to her for her moved on mother's sake. And now she had nobody to protect her. Ernest had moved on, and Harry, who was in the church decorating business, was nearly always down somewhere in the country. Besides an invariable squabble, or in this case a fight, for money, on Saturday nights had begun to weary her unspeakably. Weary meaning making her tired. She always gave her entire wages, meaning her money that she earned from working at the stores, which was only 7 shillings, and Harry always went up what he could, but the trouble was to get any money from her father. He said she used to squander the money, meaning she apparently must have spent money frivolously, or how do I say it? She had money and then she would spend it on chocolates and this and that and the other. So it wasn't used, money wasn't spent correctly on bills and stuff like that. So it was squandered. And the money, she had no heed or head that he wasn't going to give her his hard-earned money to throw about the streets and much more. For he was usually fairly bad on a Saturday night. That would usually mean he would go gambling. In the end, he would give her money and ask her dad any intention of buying Sunday's dinner. Then she had to rush out as quickly as she could and do her marketing, holding her black leather purse tightly in her hand as she elbowed her way through the crowds, returning home late under the load of provisions. So basically she had to lie, say we need something for Sunday, and once she got money, she would go quickly to the shops and buy whatever she could for the week. She had hard work to keep the house together and to see that the 2 young children who had been left to her charge went to school regularly and got their meals regularly. It was hard work, a hard life. But now that she was about to leave it, she did not find a wholly undesirable life. She was about to explore another life with Frank. Frank was very kind, manly, open-hearted. She was to go away with him by the night boat, to be his wife and to live with him in Buenos Aires. That's somewhere in South America. Again, check the previous video, where he had a home awaiting for her. How well she remembered the first time she had seen him. He was lodging in a house on the main road where she used to visit. It seemed a few weeks ago. He was standing at the gate, his peaked cap. A peaked cap basically is a cap that we all use today, except a little bit more old-fashioned. Pushed back on his head and his hair tumbled forward over his face of bronze. So he had a tanned skin. Then they had come to know each other. He used to meet her outside the stores where she worked every evening and see her home, basically walked her home. So in a way, it was nice and protective. And obviously, he got a chance to get to know her. He took her to see the Bohemian Girl, which obviously must have been a play or a song type thing, concert? Well, not really concert, but a small version of it. And she felt elated, meaning excited, as she sat in the unaccustomed part of the theatre with him. So she wasn't used to this particular part of the theatre. Maybe it was the VIP one. He was awfully fond of music and sang a little. People knew that they were courting, meaning dating, and that he sang about the lass, meaning her, that loves a sailor. She always felt pleasantly confused. So she was very happy and just enjoying everything. And yet even though she was a bit confused what on earth was happening, she was happy. He used to call her Poppins out of fun. First of all, it had been an excitement for her to have a fellow, and then she had begun to like him. He had tales of distant countries, meaning stories of other places. He had started as a deck boy at a pond of a month on the ship of an Allen line going out to Canada. So basically saying that he used to kind of be the boy that would do all of the errands on a boat. And it was on a particular type of ship that would go out to Canada. He told her the names of the ships, and he had been on the names of the different services. He had sailed through the Straits of Magellan, and he told her stories of the terrible Patagonians. He had fallen on his feet in Buenos Aires, he said, and had come over to the old country just for a holiday. Of course, her father had found out of the affair and had forbidden her to have anything to do with him or to say to him. I know these sailor chaps, he said. One day he quarreled, meaning argued, with Frank, and after that she had to meet her lover secretly. So she had to be that person who would have to leave the house quietly and to try and see her partner in crime for a chat and a secret date. The evening deepened in the avenue. The white, so now we're back to her looking at the beginning of the story. The white of two letters in her lap grew indistinct. One was to Harry, the other was to her father. Ernest had been her favorite, but she liked Harry too. Her father was becoming old lately, she noticed. He would miss her. Sometimes he could be very nice. Not long before, when she had been laid up for a day and had read her out of a ghost story and made toast for her at the fire. Another day, when their mother was still alive, they had all gone for a picnic to the hill of the house. She remembered her father putting on her mother's bonnet, which is a form of a hat, to make the children laugh. So at one stage, her father was really a pleasant guy. Her time was running out, but she continued to sit by the window, leaning her head against the window curtain, inhaling the odor of the dusty cretin. Down far in the avenue, she could hear the street organ playing. She knew the air. Strange that it should come that very night to remind her of the promise of her mother, her promise to keep the home together as long as she could. Meaning her mother asked her to please look after the home and keep everyone together as a family as much as she could. Meaning she still had the choice to move, to get married and live her life. She remembered the last night of her mother's illness. She was again in the close dark room at the other side of the hall, and outside she heard a melancholy air of Italy. The organ player had been ordered to go away and given 6 pence. So he's now playing music, but now it could be bothering some people. So in order to get rid of him, they paid him a little bit of money to move on. She remembered her father strutting back into the sick room saying, "Damned Italians, coming over here." As she mused, the pitiful vision of her mother, its life laid its spell on the very quick of her being. That life of commonplace sacrifices, closing in final craziness. Okay. She trembled as she heard again her mother's voice saying constantly with the foolish instance, "Derevon Soron." I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. This phrase basically means, "Please end my life in pain, from this pain." So her mother is basically not in a good place and she just wants to move on. She doesn't want to deal with this pain that she's feeling. She stood up in the sudden impulse of terror. Escape. She must escape. Frank would save her. He would give her life, perhaps love too, but she wanted to live. Why should she be unhappy? She had a right to happiness. Frank would take her in his arms, fold her in his arms. He would be her savior. She stood among the swaying crowd in the station of the North Wall. He held her hand, and she knew that he was speaking to her, saying something about the passage over and over again. The station was filled of soldiers with brown baggages. So these are soldiers that are going to war or they're coming back from war. And these brown baggages are actually their equipment. Yeah. Through the wide doors of the sheds, she caught a glimpse of the black mass of the boat, lying in beside the quay or the quay wall with illumined portholes, so meaning the windows of the round windows of the ship that had light in it. She answered nothing. She felt her cheek pale and cold, and out of a maze of distress, she prayed to God to direct her, to show her what was her duty. The boat blew a long, mournful whistle in the mist. If she went, tomorrow she would be on the sea with Frank, steaming towards Buenos Aires. Steaming towards meaning she's on a steamboat. Okay. Their passage had been booked. Could she still draw back after all he had done for her? Her distress awoke a nausea in her body. She kept moving her lips in a silent, fervent prayer. A bell clanged upon her heart. She felt him seize her hand. Come, all the seas of the world tumbled about her heart. He was drawing her into them. He would drown her. She gripped with both hands at the iron railing. Come! No, no, no! It was impossible. Her hands clutched the iron in frenzy. Amid the seas, she sent a cry of anguish, meaning she's like freaking out. She is scared. Eveline! Evie! He rushed beyond the barrier and called to her to follow. He was shouted at to go on, but he still called to her. She set her white face to him, passive, like a helpless animal. Her eyes gave him no sign of love or farewell or recognition. So what we're saying here is she was holding onto the railing, freaking out. She couldn't move because she was scared out of her wits' end. And unfortunately, the group of people were moving so fast that Frank had lost his grip and was forced to move onto the ship without her. So that was where she also realized, does she really want to do this? So she was scared out of her wits. Yeah, so there we go. We've got the story now done. And the next video will be about the analysis of it and a little bit about the characters. And yeah, looking forward to it. And we'll see you then. Have a good night. Bye.